And once again, it is Hanoch Young from the Big Apple, New York City. He's still there, locked up, not able to go anywhere. Oh, trying to get to the nation of Texas or Louisiana, I think it is your first stop here in a couple of weeks, right? Week and a half.
Yeah. As I had mentioned last time, I was supposed to go and visit with dear friends Joe and Debbie Good. Turns out that they had a guest that was staying with them that got sick. He left, got tested, turned out to be COVID positive. Through very bizarre circumstances and a tragedy, he wound up back at their house. And make a long story short, Joe has been sick. Their teenage granddaughter who lives with them has been sick. And Debbie, unfortunately, is very sick right now.
Wow.
I heard this last night on Joe's broadcast. So it's not that I'm locked into New York, but I make a long story short, my first stop will be Out of Ashes Ministries, and I'll be there next week.
Yeah. And it's not like it's not like you're going to rent a car and drive around somewhere, right?
No. It's just it's interesting because people's first reactions are, we'll just go to another stop. Well, this is not like one of those whistle blowing stop. It's not like I'm on Amtrak and instead of getting off in Arlington, Virginia, I just go to the next stop kind of thing. So anyway,
but, if you'd have been on I-95 in Virginia, you'd have had some time to spend there. So
yeah, I hear the news.
Oh.
And I recognize some of the locations, but I don't, it doesn't correlate because I'm getting more than a belly full of all the news from Israel.
Oh yeah.
As I sit and digest it and pull it apart and figure out what's going on.
So with that, give us what you've digested and pulled apart and what is going on over there right now.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I've gotten a couple of notes from people saying, what do you think is going on with Defense Minister Benny Gantz meeting with Mahmoud Abbas of the so-called Palestinian Authority? Because two things happened. One, there was this meeting where Abbas was invited to Gantz's home. And the other was a few days later, a series of statements that Abbas released. Now, this is a guy who was elected to one term as head of the Palestinian Authority. I think that was about 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So it just, but again,
and before him was the wonderful days of Yasser Ugly. So,
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Anyway, first of all, Gantz as defense minister is responsible for Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria. That is administered by the IDF. That remains since 1967. That has not changed. So it is totally within his purview, if you will, to have those meetings. The meetings were certainly with the knowledge beforehand of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gantz, of course, using his own, whatever's rattling around in his head, basically gave away the store.
Mm.
I mean, he gave him this concession, that concession, and it doesn't even pay to even go into this, because our listeners, this should strike, a chord because they're, of course, reading the news from Israel. I would hope. Anyway, so just a few days later, because everyone's basically thinking that we're now sitting around the campfire singing Kumbaya, Kumbaya, Manor,
Yeah,
Kumbaya.
I don't think so.
Yeah, let the sun shine in the sun. Yeah, okay, enough songs.
Okay, you're limited to 2 songs per program.
Okay, that's a serious limitation. Okay. But then you've got Mahmoud Abbas publicly celebrating the anniversary of the first terrorist attack that the so-called Palestine Liberation Organization did in Israel in 1965, when they attempted to blow up the Israel water carrier, our
Mhm,
national system that
mhm.
transports water. So people are saying, like, what the heck is going on here? First of all, this is how you dance in the Middle East. People talk out of multiple sides of their mouth, but it's important to remember, like, all of these things going on with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, you're always dealing on multiple levels.
Mhm.
And I got into an interesting conversation with some people recently about prospects for peace in the Middle East. And
In
I
my
said,
opinion, that would be a very short conversation, but
well, yeah, because it's basically you're saying this isn't going to end.
mhm.
This is there is no solution. Now all of this is going on, and in the background you've got more violent anti-Semitism, physical attacks on Jews. Now here, because I'm in New York City now, in Nueva York, I am seeing all the local news
Yeah.
that I never, I don't bother to go into. Jews are beaten up here every day. Jews
Wow.
are attacked. 20-year-old Jewish guy was beaten up for wearing an IDF sweatshirt.
Mm.
Haredim, ultra Orthodox, are attacked here all the time. Just the other day, someone, and this is, and in New York, it's not the worst of where it is. So all of this is
Yeah.
simmering, all these pots are boiling simultaneously, and all people seem to want to talk about is either what's going on COVID-wise or what they think is going on COVID-wise. Now, the thing that's funny is my second graduate degree is an MPA in health policy from New York University. That was back in the era when Mr. Hanoch used to have a few functioning brain cells that work together. Well, so I know a little bit about epidemiology. I've taken courses in it. But of course, I'm not the epidemiological expert, as everyone who reads Facebook most certainly is. So they're able to predict all kinds of trends and what this means. And I'm going to be speaking about this when I finally get to speak, because the irony is my original date to arrive in the US was yesterday.
Mhm.
So, and there's nothing like spending another 2.5 weeks where, well, anyway. Okay. So
Yeah. Got it.
this is the ultimate distraction. COVID is the ultimate distraction. Everyone is it's either they get vaccinated or they don't get vaccinated. You'd think that that's the choice. No, it's everyone's got their theory, and this is about this, and this is about that, and everyone is focused on that. And the center of the universe is Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. And that's where the fate of the world is being decided.
Isn't that kind of going along with the Torah portion this week? Well, last week, this week, next week. Aha, yeah, set you
What a
up there for easy.
coincidence.
That in Egypt, they all thought that it was about the plagues. Yeah, Egypt is like the first recorded pandemic. Planned from the spiritual realm, planned from Yah himself, and during that time, the Egyptians thought it was about the plagues. It was about those things that were happening to them, when in actuality, it really doesn't have a lot to do with them. It's about a people within their borders who are called to walk in covenant and return back to a land. Am I talking about right now, today, or a few thousand years ago? And the answer would be yes. Same thing holds true.
It's interesting. The focus that people have now seems to be very contained, very small. It's like, let me get through this period. Well, let me relate a story to something that I experienced in Israel right before I left. A few days before I left, I went to the Cardo to see our friend Udi from the Blue and White shop. Udi is like, he's got to be one of the 36 righteous upon whom the entire world depends. He is greater than any strength antidepressant I've ever tried. He is so encouraging and so wonderful and so supportive. But he told me, now this was in, I guess it was mid-December, right? Yeah, I think it was the week before I left. 3 of the shops in the Cardo were now closing because they had reopened when Israel reopened to tourists. And when they were shut down just a few weeks later, their basic will to continue was because they realized this was not the permanent return to normalcy, but rather this was just a period, and it could conceivably happen again.
Oh yeah.
Now it turns out that in all likelihood, the US will be taken off the red list. Canada is coming off the red list first. And, Americans, Canadians, and others may be let back in Israel sooner than, within the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to do this anymore. The rabbinic sources tell us that 80%, 4/5, 4 out of every 5 Israelites chose not to leave in the Exodus. Of course, now I'm jumping several weeks ahead of us, but to me, that was always, and then this ungrateful, unappreciative, self-focused people that we belong to out in the desert. Remember, we're crying to go back to Egypt. We had it so good there. We had garlic and leeks. By the way, that's a personal, not so much minhag, custom, but a thing that I do every year, that on Passover, I always make sure at the Seder to have garlic and leeks.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I do that. I put it in my soup. Well, and I normally cook with garlic and leeks.
Oh yeah.
And green onions. What's that in English? Scallions. I'm sorry.
Well, I may have to do that, because I'll use any excuse to eat garlic. I usually put garlic on garlic.
It's great. It's a wonderful antioxidant. It keeps the vampires away. What's not to like?
Oh, and by the way, I got a news flash for you, and we'll put it out here. Is that the Thai restaurant in Franklin has now opened for in-house dining, just in time for you to be here. I saw the owner the other day, and I said, Keo, you got to get this open. I said, I got a friend coming from Israel. He says, yeah, I'll get it done just for him. No, it didn't quite happen that way, but that's what happened.
It's interesting. That sounds like the kind of story that the more it gets retold, it gets shaped into how you personally did. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Mike.
Well, I mean, I literally I looked at Keo and I said, listen, Hanoch is coming from Modi'in, Israel. And on his, there's a few things that are on his list that he has to get done. He has to go to the Thai restaurant. He has to go to the Confederate store, and he has to get his haircut in
No,
Franklin. So,
well, that $5 haircut,
yeah, that's
it kind of works. Yeah,
Belinda loves you because it doesn't take long.
yeah, no, it doesn't. The Confederate store, no, that dropped off the agenda. But
Yeah, you have enough
know,
Leonard Skinner t-shirts.
yeah, well, it's actually, there's a rumor that there are people that actually count the different t-shirts that I wear. That's why I've started wearing, shirts with buttons and collars and things, just to confuse people, because it really was bad. But anyway, let's stay on point.
You really don't have much of a life when you're counting. And somebody did that to Barry the other day. They said, how many shirts do you have? So folks, if you have on your in your house a list of how many t-shirts Hanoch has, or how many shirts Barry Phillips has, you might want to question some things about life. Okay, just say.
Yeah. And again, that's a great example. Is there something on behalf of Israel that you could be doing with that time and that effort and that willingness to organize things and keep a list? But anyway, neither here nor there. Tomorrow, it seems, is January 6th.
Oh, yes.
Now, January 6th in my world was always my brother's birthday.
Okay.
Actually, it probably still is. I haven't looked. And of course, everyone in America will be obsessed with going over what happened in the Capitol last year. And I understand why our listeners would be, I mean, if you're an American citizen, that's a big event. I'm not going to go into it, what it meant, what it was, what it wasn't, who was involved, who was behind it, or all those things. But just remember, if ultimately your heart is elsewhere, then don't focus on that.
Yeah, the media tomorrow will be going absolutely crazy over they already are, but they're going to go absolutely crazy over this. And once again, it's something that divides. You may have noticed this as you've been here, even in kind of locked away a little bit, but America is so polarized. There's no discussion.
No.
You cannot have a discussion with anyone about anything. It's either you're all the way over here, all the way over here, and there's no way to talk about it. And so
absolutely true.
What we have to find is something that unites us to talk about, and that's the restoration. That's the restoration of all things. And here we are in these Torah portions, regarding the plagues and all the things that happened in Egypt. This is a great time to spend time in Jeremiah chapter 23 of that greater Exodus. What's that going to look like? What's that going to be? We don't know. We don't know how it's going to come about. But I tell you what keeps me going sometimes is just dreaming about it.
If there's no dream, if there's nothing to look forward to, if there's nothing better then the reality that we're in right now, then forget it.
Oh yeah.
Because that is not enough to keep anyone going. Now, I gotta, as we all know, I don't sleep well. And the worst thing to do when you get up during the night is go and look at your phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for me, wherever I am, there's always stuff going on my phone. In other words, if I'm here in America, there's, Israel being 7 hours
Mhm.
ahead. Again, I'm talking North, Eastern time. There's, the whole world is happening. Or when I'm in Israel, my friends outside of Israel, here in the US and Canada, are, they're still writing stuff, when it's 4 a.m. for me. So make a long story short. So I see a note from a friend of mine who is really glad that I'm here in America. Because like he said, I have no idea when you as a tour guide will be able to earn a single shekel ever again, which is, just look on the bright side of life. Okay. Well, special allowance for your third week in New York, you're allowed a third song.
All right.
Anyway,
We'll let y'all know.
he then writes an extensive thing of places around the US that I could probably go and get work. In the Ozarks, he tells me South Carolina. He tells me there's a Chabad in Greenville,
Mhm.
which, I mean, that in and of itself would be a big attraction for me. I mean,
Maybe you could sign up to lead the Hanukkah service next December in Columbia.
yeah, that was when I went a few years ago with Jan and Craig. That was a really interesting experience.
Well,
But anyway, so on the one hand, I appreciate the thought, of it's nice that
mhm.
it's nice to know that I do have friends who are concerned that I will starve to death and be homeless, potentially. Um, on the other hand, the idea that I would live indefinitely in the US. Now, again, remember, it was, and he's listing different people that we know in common that could put me up for a while. Now,
Yeah.
I don't have a car. And like in New York, for instance, you could live and work and not have a car. There's a thing here called subways. Um, they don't have that in the Republic of Texas.
Mm-mm.
They don't have, it's like, wow, like, gee, maybe I should ask Mike and Kathy. I could stay in Franklin and maybe I get a job in Charlotte. Well, I've looked at a map and there's it's so that I appreciate the thought, peeps, but
And
that's
and
not the answer.
and just for the record, if you got a job and needed a car, you ain't borrowing mine.
No, no. First of all, I don't even have a, it's funny, I didn't get the international driver's license thing. Um, but I haven't driven a car regularly since before the year 2000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my reflexes which were probably not great then. But anyway, back to the point here. The point is you have to have an internal compass
Yeah.
pointing you towards something. Now, whether tourists are allowed into Israel today or tourists are allowed into Israel tomorrow doesn't mean people shouldn't be preparing. And that's the whole thing, because it's interesting to watch, to spend so much time on social media, that you see what people do with their money.
Mm-hmm.
this one's going on vacation, and this one just bought this new thing, and that one just bought that new thing. I don't begrudge people. But then when someone sends a note, well, now that's going to sound
Yeah,
gripey.
I
I
got
don't
it.
want to, no reason to go gripes.
You know where
But
your
anyway,
where your heart is. You know, you mentioned Udi, and this man, I've been with this man in his store, him and his dad, so many times. I've watched him prophesy over people, and things come to pass in their lives. I mean, what an incredible! I miss him dearly. I ordered something the other day from eBay, from Israel, something for our congregation, and since we have, you know, some people from the congregation that listen, I'm not going to say what it is, but so I ordered something, and it was amazing. I got a not just a, you know, it's a seller there in Israel, I believe in Tel Aviv or Yafo, and it wasn't just that I got a thank you for the, you know, your order. It was this long note. This long note that this guy spent time typing out on, you know, and messaging me through eBay, thanking me for the order. It was like $12. Okay, it wasn't a major purchase, and I tell you, I tracked that thing coming, you know, across the from Tel Aviv. Wow, it's, you know, it's at the postal there in Tel Aviv, and it's in the States, and we got it in a couple days ago, and I stood there with the package in my hands and was almost in tears because it was like, this was just there. This was just, it would be like, you know, in the Hebrews in Egypt getting a FedEx from something that came from Canaan. You just sit there and kind of look at it and go, this package was just in the environment, with the air of Israel around it. And, you know, people may think, you know, well, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Yet let it be silly to you. It's not to me.
it's, I totally understand. And as I've said to people many times, you know, I'll be on a bus going into Jerusalem from Modi'in, and we're driving through southern Shomron, southern Samaria. And I'm just looking around, and I literally have to pinch myself, saying, what did I ever do
Yeah.
to deserve this?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I'm getting emotional here. This is, and what I struggle with when I travel and speak is not understanding what it is about that others don't get.
It's a supernatural connection, Hanoch. You know, this is the thing that has, if you and I could figure out how to take that and place it into someone, but the truth is you can't. You and I have both seen people that we've taken to Israel. They're on the same bus, same tour, meeting the same people, eating the same ice cream, drinking the same wine, and one, when they get on the plane to come back, they start crying. The other one is just can't wait until the plane takes off. I've seen this with literally hundreds of people. I don't know the answer.
You know, yeah. A few years ago, we finished our Connect to Israel experience by stopping in Caesarea.
Mm-hmm.
And the sun is starting to set. It's a chance to walk under this 2,000-year-old aqueduct.
Yeah.
Dip your toesies in the Mediterranean. It was a nice thing. And we had people who wouldn't get off the bus,
Mm-hmm.
because there was nothing to buy.
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't a large number of people, a few people.
Mhm.
So yeah, now I would have thought that with the polarization of the United States of America, that people who believe themselves to be, quote unquote, of Israel, part of Israel, whether it's the Christian concept of being grafted in, whatever that means, whether they're part of the tribes of Israel, whether they're the ones joined to Hashem, whether they're those associated with the stick of Judah and the stick of Ephraim, etc., whatever. It's like, you can call me whatever you want, just don't call me late for dinner. You would think that this would be a time where they're focused more on Israel, as opposed to what I call the Chicken Little syndrome. The sky is falling, the sky is falling, sky, look at it, oh my God, oh my God. And it's the kind of thing that I just say, the clock continues to tick. Time is going by, and your life is being wasted.
And the truth is, we've talked about this so many times, it's a sifting. It's a sifting. And, the vast majority of people that listen to us on a weekly basis are those who have the same frustrations as we do. They're talking to the same people, and they're getting the same deer in the headlights look. But this is not a time to say, well, it's a time to wonder, as you just said, and I've done that so many times. You're riding around on a bus saying, how did I become so blessed to be here? And the answer to that is, there is no real answer. You just accept it. And you quote Ronnie Levy, or not Ronnie, Nir Levy, who says over 100 times before lunch, Baruch Hashem.
It just hit me. But you have to choose to be blessed, or to bless.
Yeah.
You have to choose. You have to make that decision and say, you know what? I'm not just going to be like the rest of these people here in the Walmart parking lot. I see that there's a bigger picture to the world than, whatever it might be. And
well, to give a kind of a little different translation on a verse in the Gospels, many are called, but few answer it.
If I was writing a commentary on that, I would say even fewer bother to hear whatever that call was, let alone consider it, let alone to act upon it, let alone to get off their behinds and go and do something with it.
Yeah. All right. Hey, we're out of time. Well, enjoy the rest of your stay there in exile. And you're leaving. When did you say you leave?
On Wednesday. So we'll discuss when to record.
We'll figure it out. Okay. All right. I would say this to you when you're in Israel, but it would be kind of like whatever. But since you're in New York, be safe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All
Absolutely.
Right. Take care, man.
Take care, Mike. Bye-bye.